Talks with Ramana Maharshi. Can a householder realize God, or is it reserved only for monks and nuns? Such questions often come up in the minds of people. It has to do with renunciation in the spiritual sense. This renunciation is generally considered to be giving up a typical worldly materialistic life and adopting a spiritual life with the goal of realizing God. But what is true renunciation? Does one have to become a monk or a nun to renounce worldly attachments and realize God? Can a householder too realize God? And in order to determine the spiritual stature of a person, should we only consider their station in life, or their outer appearance of a hermit, or their self-proclaimed spiritual experiences? What is real renunciation? What really qualifies one to realize God? To provide answers to all these questions, I would like to present the teachings of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, who has the personal experience of realizing God and who abides in perfect peace. Here are a few conversations. Visitor: how does a grihastha, householder, proceed in the scheme of moksha, liberation? Maharishi: why do you think you are a grihastha? If you go out as a sannyasi, hermit, a similar thought that you are a sannyasi will haunt you. Whether you continue in the household or renounce it and go to the forest, your mind haunts you. The ego is the source of thoughts. It creates the body and the world and makes you think you are a grihastha. If you renounce the world, it will only substitute the thought sannyasi for grihastha, and it will substitute the environments of the forest for those of the household. But the mental obstacles are always there. They even increase in new surroundings. There is no help in the change of environment. The obstacle is the mind. It must be got over, whether at home or in the forest. If you can do it in the forest, why not in the home? Therefore, why change the environment? Your efforts can be made even now, in whatever environment you may be. Another conversation. A Maulvi, a learned Muslim teacher, asked, is it better to reach salvation being married or being a hermit? Maharishi: whatever you think is better. Another conversation. Dr. Syed asked, should anyone desirous of spiritual progress take to action or renunciation? Maharishi: do you go out of the self? What is meant by giving up? Another conversation. An American asked, what is renunciation? Maharishi: giving up of the ego. Visitor: is it not giving up possessions? Maharishi: the possessor too. Visitor: the world will change if the people will give up their possessions for the benefit of others. Maharishi: first give yourself up and then think of the rest. Another conversation. An aristocratic lady asked Ramana Maharshi, for self-realization, is not samsara, worldly life, a hindrance? Do not all the holy books advocate renunciation of worldly life? Maharishi: Samsara is only in your mind. The world does not speak out, saying, I am the world. Otherwise, it must be ever there, not excluding your sleep. Since it is not in sleep, it is impermanent. Being impermanent, it has no stamina. Having no stamina, it is easily subdued by the self. The self alone is permanent. Renunciation is non-identification of the self with the non-self. On the disappearance of ignorance, the non-self ceases to exist. That is true renunciation. Visitor: why did you then leave your home in your youth? Maharishi: that is my prarabdha, fate, destiny. One's course of conduct in this life is determined by one's prarabdha. My prarabdha is this way, your prarabdha is that way. Visitor: shouldn't I renounce the worldly life too? Maharishi: if that had been your prarabdha, the question would not have arisen. Visitor: I should therefore remain in the world and engage in spiritual practice. Well, can I get realization in this life? Maharishi: you are always the self. Earnest efforts never fail. Success is bound to result. Visitor: will Maharishi kindly extend grace to me also? Maharishi smiled and said, yes, yes. Another conversation. Dr. Syed asked, is it morally right for a man to renounce his household duties once he realizes that his highest duty is Atma Chintana, continuous thought on the self? Maharishi: this desire to renounce things is the obstacle. The self is simple renunciation. The self has renounced all. Visitor: it is true from Bhagavan's standpoint, but for us, my work demands the best part of my time and energy. Often I am too tired to devote myself to Atma Chintana. Maharishi: the feeling I work is the hindrance. Enquire, who works? Remember, who am I? The work will not bind you. It will go on automatically. Make no effort either to work or to renounce work. Your effort is the bondage. What is bound to happen will happen. If you are destined to cease working, work cannot be had even if you hunt for it. If you are destined to work, you cannot leave it. You will be forced to engage in it. So, leave it to the higher power. You cannot renounce or hold as you choose. Another conversation. Visitor: can a sannyasi, a monk or a nun, remain in the midst of samsara, worldly attachments? Maharishi: so long as one thinks that he is a sannyasi, he is not a sannyasi. So long as one does not think of samsara, worldly attachments, then he is not a samsari, a worldly person. On the other hand, he is a sannyasi. Another conversation. Visitor: is it necessary to take sannyasa, become a monk for self-realization? Maharishi: sannyasa is to renounce one's individuality. This is not the same as shaving one's head or wearing a monk's clothing. A man may be a householder, yet if he does not think he is a householder, he is a sannyasi, one who has renounced worldly attachments in the mind. On the contrary, a man may wear the clothing of a monk, a sannyasi, and wander about. Yet, if he thinks he is a sannyasi, he is not that. To think of sannyasa defeats its own purpose. Another conversation. Sri Annamalai Swami wanted to retire into a cave for practicing meditation. Maharishi said to him, "That man who is active in the world and yet remains desireless without losing sight of his own essential nature is alone a true man." Sri Annamalai Swami also asked Maharishi about sannyas, renunciation of worldly life as a householder and becoming a monk or a nun. He asked, "Should not a man renounce everything in order that he might get liberation?" Maharishi, even better than the man who thinks, "I have renounced everything," is the one who does his duty but does not think, "I do this," or "I am the doer." Even a sannyasi who thinks, "I am a sannyasi," cannot be a true sannyasi, whereas a householder who does not think, "I am a householder," is truly a sannyasi. Another conversation. To a spiritual seeker, Sri Bhagavan said, "Sannyasa, renunciation of worldly life as a householder, is mentioned for one who is fit. It consists in renunciation not of material objects, but of attachment to them. Sannyasa can be practiced by anyone, even at home. Only thing is, one must be fit for it." Another conversation. A visitor, a lawyer, said that a reputed Mahatma told him to chant Om Namaha instead of just Om because chanting pure Om is meant for sannyasis only, whereas others can repeat Om Namaha. The visitor asked Maharishi about it. Maharishi said, "Should not others, beside the sannyasis, inquire into the self and realize it?" Another conversation. A learned visitor asked, "What is the true meaning of renunciation? Is it subjugation of passions, or is renunciation something else, meaning cessation of the active life?" Maharishi, freedom from passions is the essential requisite. When that is accomplished, all else is accomplished. Visitor, is it then necessary to leave the home and lead the life of renunciation? Maharishi, is the home in you, or are you in the home? Visitor, it is in my mind. Maharishi, then what becomes of you when you leave the physical environment? Visitor, now I see. Renunciation is only action without the sense of being the actor. To summarize, here is the gist of all these conversations that Ramana Maharshi had with a few visitors. From these enlightening, rational, and easy to follow teachings, we can clearly learn and understand the following. To realize God, one's station in life, that is, whether one is a hermit or a householder, does not matter. One's station in life is due to prarabdha, destiny. If you perform your worldly duties without mental attachments, then you are a true sannyasi, even if outwardly you appear as a householder. But if you have attachments in the mind of any kind, then you are not a sannyasi, even if outwardly you appear as a sannyasi. The life of a hermit does make it easier to concentrate on inner quests of God. But that does not mean that a householder, an ordinary person with family and worldly duties, cannot realize God. God realization or self realization has to do with the mind. The mental stature of a person alone matters, not their outer garbs or their station in life or where they live. But the most important thing to learn from Maharishi's amazing words is that you should not be discouraged in your spiritual efforts and inner quests because of your station in life or the worldly activities you've been destined to perform. The thought that one is a sinner should never occur in the mind. Instead, one should understand that one's true nature is actually perfection and bliss, and that it is the ego that causes all the problems. Firmly understanding this, one should give up the ego and realize one's own real nature, the perfect, blissful self. In brief, the wonderful message that Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi gives us is as follows: whoever you are, wherever you live, and whatever your life is, man or woman, you can aspire and make efforts to become a nobler person and realize God. As Maharishi himself said, earnest efforts never fail. Success is bound to result, and that is only because of His amazing grace.